thanks to the Sound Facebook page, there seems to be a lot of things going on over at 88.5, which is where a lot of listeners went after the Sound went off the air. So they're listening to 88.5, but there's some changes going on there. Dave, do you know anything about what's going on over there?
I have not. I know many people over there. Some of our former colleagues at the Sound are now at the SoCal Sound, as they call it, at 88.5. And I've not talked to them because it's so much more fun this way. You know, to just be a stupid outsider who speculates, doesn't know what the research says or what the goals are or what the revenue challenges are. I don't want those headaches. I had them for years. I don't need to know that. All I need to do now is just sit on the sideline and tell them they're wrong. Yeah, so it's a lot more fun.
We could make up stuff here and just say, you know, we heard, even though it's ourselves.
Yes, or as someone is known to say, well, you know, a lot of people say that a certain politician who claims to not be a politician would always attribute his thoughts to a lot of people are saying.
That's right. Now, Dave talks about, he doesn't know what's going on over there and all of that, which I believe him, but he does understand why stations change, and you might have some insight in that area, right?
Well, yeah, I've been doing some thinking about what's going on over there and just looking at it purely as an outsider to what seems to be happening. The commotion from the former Sound fans that are still active on Facebook, a lot of it came from Mimi Chen, her show getting canceled on Sunday afternoons called Peace, Love, and Sundays, which was a transfer from the old 100.3 The Sound. She was on Sunday mornings. It was Peace, Love, and Sunday Mornings at the time, right. Kind of an older based music show. The concept originally was that it was kind of hippie skippy with Mimi was is known as the flower child, and so it was music that didn't get played that much on classic rock, and she's evolved it some since then and done a really nice job. So that crowd really does miss that show. I guess her last show was last Sunday, but that is one of several moves that they appear to be making where they're taking these specialty shows that differ from their normal format and either canceling them or moving them late at night, getting them out of prime time kind of hours. Usually when a station does that, it's because they believe in what they're doing as a format and their regular rotation of music and so forth. And they want people to know what's going to be on the radio station when they turn it on. They want to be more consistent about that music recipe being on when people turn on the station. So it's a difficult trade-off, I would think, especially for a station like this that is not that ratings dependent. As other stations are, being a public radio station that relies upon contributors for their income. You know, there are two constituencies to a commercial station or a public station. You've got your listeners, and more precisely, the listeners who participate in Nielsen ratings, on the one hand, and then you've got your advertisers, contributors, whoever it is, commercial versus public, on the other side of things. The contributors can include people who are, in essence, advertisers who like to have that underwriting message on there. And for those folks, they probably care a little bit about how big the audience is and who is in that audience. So the ratings, the listenership is certainly not something they consider if they're a contributor of that type, an organization or a corporate entity or what have you. You've got your record label folks as well who want a station like this in Southern California that plays current music of this type.
Right.
Yeah. And they are restricted by the payola rules that they can't just write a check for airplay, but they can make an artist available for, I'm sorry, Richard, what was that?
That's where the drugs come in, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the hookers. Yeah. And we're going back a few years, but before my time in radio, believe me. But yeah, they can do things. The modern version of that is they can, without it being quid pro quo, there can't be any evidence that they said, if you play my record, I will do this. Nevertheless, if they have an artist that could become available for a fundraising event, a concert, that sort of thing, or if they have a station out there that needs some T-shirts or some digital advertising or some bumper stickers or whatever sort of promotional support, they can go out and support a station in that way. They just can't write direct checks and say it was because of airplay.
You can do that if you announce it on the air, can't you? Like this portion is sponsored by whatever.
Yeah, that's true. You could do that, and there have been some people that experiment with that. So it's, I think, for 88.5 for the SoCal Sound, the listener, they rely, I don't know what their budget is, how much of their income, their revenue is derived from listeners spending 100, 200, whatever a year with monthly donations on the low end versus advertising type contributors versus organizations, foundations. I don't know. I don't have no idea. Among the listeners that make those smaller contributions, a lot of them probably are passionate about those shows like Peace, Love, and Sundays. That may be when Mimi Chen says, hey, it's fundraising time, and if you love this show, you need to support it. That may be something that gets the phones to ring during those pledge drives. So they may lose some revenue from having less of those sorts of shows on the air. On the other hand, if they can drive more listenership to the overall format, if they think that's what they're going to do by playing the regular format more, then they may see upside in that direction, or they may have listeners who are passionate about their regular format that they think will support them in that, as well as their other contributors. So it's that's all just speculation from the sidelines about how they must be looking at this. I did take a look at the music in regular rotation online, looked at some lists and that sort of a thing. And there are some changes that have happened lately. And you do hear some of those folks that are complaining about losing those specialty shows, which are mostly gold-oriented kind of specialty shows,
right?
Complaining that the station is playing a lot newer music overall. And that is somewhat true. The average era of the station in regular rotation, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p. So really going to the prime hours to see what they're really trying to do when they're in prime. The average era of the station over the past year has moved from 2002 to 2005 musically. So they've moved it up a little bit. Their current to gold ratio is about the same as it used to be. They're still about 2/3 gold and about 1/3 current and recurrent in their regular rotation. So not a big difference there. But if you look at who the artists are in those current songs that they're playing, looking at October of 2021, a Monday through Friday daytime list of the top 20 songs, it was, I'll read the artist list of the top 20. St. Paul and the Broken Bones, Jack White, Courtney Barnett, Band of Horses, Lindsey Buckingham, My Morning Jacket, Orla Gartland, Tori Amos, They Might Be Giants, Indigo de Sousa, Eels, Sting, Neil Francis, Duran Jones, and the Indicators. I'm not sure the artist that cut me off here. Ahi, Melissa Etheridge, Good Morning, The Regrets, Parquet Courts, and Johnny Marr. And my mispronunciations tell you how up on things I am. But that was from a year ago. 8 out of 20 of those songs come from what we'll call heritage artists, like Tori Amos, Sting, They Might Be Giants, people like that.
Right.
Whereas now, the top 20, Phoenix, Sudan Archives, Mountjoy, Mitski, Vo, Michelle Branch, Death Cab for Cutie, Dora Jar, Barnes Courtney, so forth, so on. 0 out of the top 20 are those heritage type of artists. So those classic rock and more rock-oriented listeners are also noticing Monday through Friday a movement towards the newer type of new music, if that makes sense. That stuff that is a little bit more poppy, less guitar-oriented kind of new music that's out there. So there is that. And if you look at the overall artists now, including the top artists on the station, the top 10 artists on the station from a year ago versus today, a year ago, 7 out of 10 of the top artists were gold artists, number 1 being David Bowie, number 2 being Pearl Jam, number 4 Talking Heads, 5 U2, Bob Marley, number 6. 7 out of 10 of the top artists on the station were artists that aren't even recording anymore. Whereas now, out of the top 10 artists on the station, you've still got Tom Petty and U2 and some people in there. David Bowie still makes the top 10, but it's 4 out of the top 10 that aren't recording now as opposed to 7 out of the top 10. So they've definitely moved the station a little bit more progressive, a little bit more current, cutting edge, that sort of a thing. Maybe there's some record label benefit to that. I don't know. Although they're playing 92 current songs in a week compared to 131 per week before. They've focused their current music a little bit more, but it's focused a little bit less around those classic rock heritage type artists, even in the current music.
Which is interesting to me because as you and I, as we've talked about in regards to the sound, when you first started, you tried to beef up the currents and you tried to make the station play a lot more new music, and the research didn't bear it out, if I remember correctly. Right?
Yeah, the ratings didn't bear it out for sure. We were starting to get. We were launched as a AAA station, as KCSN is, adult album alternative, the format type. We started as that and then ended up morphing towards classic rock because I think the station signed on in April of 2008. Is that right? Yeah. And PPM ratings, Nielsen ratings went from diary to PPM in, I think, August, September of that year, where it became the currency. Yeah. Not to mention the economy crashing as well that year.
Right. Right.
So when we launched, we were starting to get up in that 2-share range with diaries. And our corporate bosses said, a 2-share in Los Angeles will make money. That's fine. That's our goal, is just, But when PPM came in and you went from diary measurement, recall measurement to meters for Nielsen, or Arbitron as it was at the time, AAA stations all around the country took a dive. And we did too. All of our momentum stopped when PPM came in because PPM does not like current music.
Right. So that would still apply, I would think, in this case to some degree. But on the other hand, they are a public radio station per se, and they're supposed to be doing things that are different. So maybe there's some philosophy going on there that isn't ratings driven.
If the donors who make big donations aren't finding the music anywhere else, they might be willing to make big donations, where if the music can be found elsewhere, they're not as likely to do that.
Could be.
Dave, do you think it might have anything to do, because these were not volunteer people, right? They were professional paid people. Do you think also it might have anything to do with being able to cut a few positions and have the weekly staff kind of, pre-record the shows or do voice tracking or whatever?
Maybe. Yeah, that's, that would be pure speculation. So let's say yes. No, I'm just.
Well, and it's kind of early to tell because we haven't seen the whole metamorphosis yet. So
yeah, it could be. I don't know. That's a good point. Yeah, and do those specialty show folks? They do get paid, right?
I don't know. So, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, they do. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think it might have anything to do with the changes that you're seeing at K-Rock? Because if they've gone away from being a little more modern, progressive, back to a little more gold, Is it a slight reaction to those changes?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But the current music that they're playing, the percentage of current is about the same now on 88.5 as it was a year ago. It's just there's a little bit of a shift away from Sting and Jack White and Tori Amos new music to Mountjoy, Dora Jar, Barnes Courtney, Biba Doobie, Lissy, local natives. It is newer artists for sure.
Well, I guess we'll have to keep an eye on this, because it will be an interesting test for that station and for new music on the radio in general, because we've talked about how new music is just not played on the radio. Richard did the survey of his class, and they all went to Spotify for their music. So this is going to be an interesting test to see if they can pull it off, right? If they're going to be able to pull it off.
Absolutely. That is the other factor that a lot of new music fans and all music fans are going more and more to streaming. 18 to 34, what statistic did I see this week? I think past 3 years, 18 to 34s, radio has lost 30%, 40% of the 18 to 34 audience that they had 3 years ago.
That can't be. I keep hearing from the NAB that everything's...
Okay. All right. Well, I think on that note, we'll close things down here before we get into
snarky comment to end on.
Right.
Yes. Richard gets the last word.
Yeah, absolutely.